typically why people are not comfortable sharing that they are living with this diagnosis of dementia or any cognitive impairment. Also why their loved ones are maybe hiding the diagnosis from others too because of that stigma. We are working really hard at Memory Cafe to reduce that stigma. I'm really proud of our participants at Memory Cafe for raising their voice and for sharing, I am living with this. I'm living with dementia, and this is how I feel about it.
Welcome to the DMF podcast, where you will find great conversations with interesting people who have been called to serve. We'll meet impactful charities, dive deep into pressing health topics, and learn from servant leaders who are working to see, be, and spread light. At the end of each episode, we hope you're inspired to realize that you have your own unlimited potential to change the world for the better. Join us as we work to create a region of the healthiest, most purpose-driven people on the planet. Welcome back to the DMF podcast. I'm your host, Whitney Isaacson. Thanks so much for joining me in another conversation as we highlight a charity that is doing important work in our community. The worst feeling is forgetting something that you were trying to remember or find. I have done it so many times, but luckily the memory comes back to me eventually. But for those struggling with the diagnosis of memory loss, that's not the case. It's a never-ending battle of forgetting. Today's guest is going to be sharing with us all about how the people who are forgetting should not be forgotten. I'm excited to introduce Maggie Ness, the Executive Director of Memory Cafe of the Red River Valley. We're there on a mission to recognize the beauty and the value of those living with memory loss while inspiring them and their caregivers with hope, joy, and a sense of empowerment. So whether you're looking to learn more about Memory Cafe or memory loss, I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation, so let's get into it. All right, everyone, we're sitting down with Maggie here in the studio today. And Maggie, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for just everything you do in the community to support those with memory loss. It's something that gets overlooked.
Yeah, thank you. It sometimes is, and that's why Memory Cafe exists. Mm-hmm. So excited to be here to talk about what we're offering here at Memory Cafe.
Yes, and I'm excited to learn just more and more about everything you guys do today. So as we jump in, I know you're the executive director, so I'd love to ask, what are you most passionate about in your role, and why do you do what you do?
Yeah, that is a great question. I am most passionate about my role because I've been personally impacted by dementia, and I'm a social worker. And so prior to me joining Memory Cafe, I had a few years of experience in long-term care and the hospital setting. And in those roles, I was working with people impacted by dementia, whether they were living with this diagnosis or caring for someone. And I was also working through this diagnosis with my great aunt in a personal aspect. And my great aunt did not have children. I was her goddaughter. And so she was basically my third grandma. And I walked alongside my parents as they were helping her through her vascular dementia and navigating things that they had never navigated before. And this passion really started for me, and really recognizing that there was a lot of questions, there was a lot of unknown with this journey for my parents and for my great aunt. And I was also noticing that for the people I was working with professionally. And so that's really where my passion started, is realizing that there was more support that's needed for many people on this journey, not just me and my family, but I was noticing that in that professional setting too.
Yeah. So did Memory Cafe find you, or did you find Memory Cafe?
Yeah. So prior to me joining Memory Cafe of the Red River Valley, I was actually at the Alzheimer's Association for 5 years as a senior program manager. And one of my first weeks at the Alzheimer's Association, I got to join my coworker, Kendra Binger, at Memory Cafe of the Red River Valley. It was a very new organization at that time, but we at the Alzheimer's Association got to go in and provide education to the participants at Memory Cafe. And so that was where I was first aware of what this incredible organization was. And then after spending those 5 years at the Alzheimer's Association, I continued to work with Deb Call and Leora at Memory Cafe and was just inspired by the work that was being done there. I would have one-on-one care consultations, is what we called it at the Alzheimer's Association, with individuals who are living with dementia and caregivers. And many of them were attending Memory Cafe and reaping the benefits of the programs that they were offering. And so that was just my encounters with Memory Cafe. And when they decided to hire in this executive director role, I was thrilled because this is truly something that, again, I'm super passionate about serving in. And I got the opportunity now to work alongside these incredible team members and participants at Memory Cafe.
Yeah. So for anyone listening that doesn't know exactly what Memory Cafe is, can you give us a quick overview and why you guys exist?
Absolutely. So Memory Cafe of the Red River Valley is a nonprofit organization here in the Fargo-Moorhead area where we serve those who are impacted by dementia or any type of memory loss caused by whatever medical reason is causing their memory loss. So we have people who have Alzheimer's disease, so various types of dementia, could be vascular dementia, frontotemporal dementia. It could also be someone is experiencing changes to their memory or cognition based on a past brain injury, a stroke, major heart attack. There's many reasons we can be experiencing cognitive impairment. And so we support those who are living with these changes as well as their caregivers.
Okay. Yeah. Good to know. So with your experience and your passion, I'd consider you an expert for sure. So I'm curious if you can explain the difference or how they are connected, but the difference and connection between dementia and Alzheimer's.
Yeah, that's a great question. And whenever we do education, probably the number one question we get is what is the difference between the two? We hear them used together all the time. I think the best way that I've been described dementia and Alzheimer's is first starting with dementia. And so dementia is really an umbrella term. It's a general term that's used to describe the change in cognitive functioning that someone's experiencing in a day-to-day life. So someone is experiencing changes potentially to their short-term memory loss, not able to remember something that had just happened 30 minutes ago or a conversation that they were just having. It could also be changes to cognition, such as being able to complete an everyday task, making coffee in the morning, or taking the steps to even take a shower. I worked with an individual who had young onset dementia, and being in that shower and not knowing if it was a shampoo or the body wash or which one do I use next. And so someone who's experiencing those changes to cognition that's affecting a day-to-day life, that could be dementia, and that's that general term, where Alzheimer's disease is under the dementia umbrella. So there's many different types of dementia. We hear Alzheimer's used together with dementia because it's that most common type of dementia. Alzheimer's disease accounts for about 60 to 80% of dementia cases. But there's other types of dementia that people can be living with, such as vascular dementia, and it accounts, or it's typically about the second most common type of dementia. And typically someone has vascular dementia after experiencing multiple mini strokes to the brain, a major stroke to the brain, and just having that lack of blood flow. So that's another common type. Dementia with Lewy bodies, vascular dementia and dementia with Lewy bodies kind of fight each other for that second most common type. But someone with dementia with Lewy bodies might experience Parkinson's-like symptoms. So maybe like tremors in their hands. They might also experience a shuffled gait when they walk. Another common type of symptom we might experience with dementia with Lewy bodies is hallucinations. And what I like to share about the hallucinations that those individuals may experience is that typically they're not scary for the individual. They more so might look out a window and see a pet, like a dog running outside, or a child playing at the park when there's really no dog or child outside that window. It's more so scary for the caregiver who hears their loved ones say that. So those are just a few types of dementia. I share that because it's really helpful for us to be aware that we don't just want to stop with a dementia diagnosis, because diagnosing has come a long way in various types of dementia. And many times when we receive thorough testing, we can understand what type of dementia someone is living with, and what symptoms you may experience based on that. So that's a really long answer for
it's
dementia.
very, very educational, seriously. So what are some of the signs that someone might recognize in a loved one, or maybe in themselves, that maybe there's something I need to seek help in? And the second part of that is, what's that first step of how to seek help?
Yeah, great question. So there's a list of, it's called the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's disease or types of dementia. And really taking a look at those 10 warning signs. I won't list all of them. Okay. A few you might recognize that are common could be, again, changes in short-term memory loss. So being able to, you just came in from the gym, you're home now, and now that you're doing some tasks at home, you maybe forgot that you even went to the gym. That would be a change in short-term memory loss. Your brain is not recalling that what you had just done before taking part in another activity. Another example could be word finding. Being able to, when you're talking to someone, being able to find that right word. That happens to me all the time, but typically my brain is able to, after taking a little bit to think about that right word, I can come up with it. But if it's happening multiple times during the day, and you're just noticing it becoming burdensome for you, that could be concerning. Another thing could be, you're going to the grocery store, you see someone that's super familiar to you, and you can't remember their name. So you finish your shopping, you get home, and you're preparing dinner that night, and again, you forget maybe that encounter had happened. That would be worrisome. What's not worrisome is if you get back and you're preparing dinner after being at the grocery store and you think, oh, that was Susan at the grocery store. That's good brain recall. Your brain was able to help you recall that situation that had just happened, and it also helps you recall that name. So those can be a few things. The completing tasks during the day, if that's becoming difficult. So yeah, there's the list of 10 warning signs. You can find that on the Alzheimer's Association website. But if you're noticing that these things are becoming a challenge for you, it's happening more frequently, it's really important that we talk to our doctor about those changes that we're experiencing. Early diagnosis is really important for really helping you navigate what these next steps are for you, what's going to be helpful for you with this diagnosis. And also, we're learning that if treatment is an option for Alzheimer's disease, the early diagnosis, the treatments are going to work better. And these treatments are not going to cure the diagnosis, but it can help along the journey.
Yes. Thank you for sharing. So I've also heard you guys talk a lot about isolation and how people who may be experiencing memory loss are also struggling with isolation because it's a scary disease. And how is isolation affecting those with memory loss? Yeah.
Isolation is a big concern for all of us when we know the devastating impacts of isolation, especially if you are living with memory loss or you're caring for someone living with memory loss. We may not always want to share about this diagnosis with others, and that can isolate us from being able to talk with others about these changes that we're experiencing or our loved ones are experiencing. We just had our Redefining Memory Loss conference, and one of the things a neurologist shared was to be honest. And that was his biggest advice to his patients, is to be honest about this diagnosis and to share it with others because of the power that can come after we get that off of our chest and the help that we can receive after doing so. And one of the biggest suggestions from providers that they're giving their patients is to not isolate yourself, to not stay home, but to be in community with others because of the incredible benefits of socializing with this diagnosis. One thing I didn't mention of changes that someone can experience with dementia, I guess I did a little bit, is communication. So word finding, I mentioned that. But just your ability to communicate with others. It's a big function of our brain, and a challenge we might experience with dementia. And so when we're socializing with others, that's helping our skill functioning in communication. So that's a really great benefit. But also, how do we feel when we're socializing? When we're with our friends?
Feel great.
We feel great. We may not always want to get out of the house and go socialize, but we're usually a lot happier after we've done that. And so there's significantly great benefits of socializing with others. It was mentioned at our conference that providers, wish that they could make a prescription just to go socialize, to be in community with others. And so that is one of the great things I see of Memory Cafe is that opportunity.
Remember that Giving Hearts Day is a year-round effort. At the end of the episode, we'd invite you to head to givingheartsday.org to give, find a volunteer opportunity, or donate goods to this charity or one of the other 600 plus important causes throughout our region. And don't forget to mark your calendars for Giving Hearts Day 2026, the region's largest 24-hour give-a-thon. Giving Hearts Day 2026 will be held on Thursday, February 12th. See you then. Yeah, so tell me more about what it looks like to engage with Memory Cafe. I know you guys have so many programs, so many support groups. I know you guys have a fun choir. So tell me about your guys' services.
Yeah, so we have a lot of different programs at Memory Cafe. It's kind of like an a la carte option. You don't have to come to everything at Memory Cafe, but our goal is to provide a variety of programs that can fit different people's needs. And so we have, we meet weekly, Monday mornings to kind of start. Monday mornings, we are at Bethel Church in Fargo, and we get to be together in community with about 80 to, we've gotten up to 99 participants on a Monday morning. And to start the day, we have a CrossFit coach who comes, Coach Jake from CrossFit Fargo. He comes to lead us in exercise, because another important thing is that we are moving our bodies. And there's many benefits to that in our brain health and our mental health too. And so we start the day with exercise, and we do that for about 30 minutes. After exercise, we get to go into small groups. And so we have a variety of groups that meet every Monday morning. Those groups range from caregiver groups. We have a men's caregiver group. We have a ladies caregiver group. And those caregivers are either caregiving for their spouse, they're caregiving for a parent, maybe a grandparent, but typically we see the spouse and the parent caregivers. At the same time those individuals are meeting, we also have an early stage group. So people who are living with early stage symptoms of cognitive impairment, they get to meet with others, and we call that group The Gathering, who are navigating life with these changes. So these people are living independently, they're driving, they're doing all things on their own, but they have these challenges that they're experiencing. So The Gathering is another group that meets on Monday mornings. The Gathering is for people who are living with early stage changes to their cognition, whether it's dementia, whether it's they had that brain injury, stroke that's causing changes to their cognition. And this group, we provide them with an opportunity to meet others and learn how others are living well with this. Learn how others are navigating these changes that are that are impacting their day-to-day life. And they get to learn these tools together. We also provide each participant this really fantastic manual that's called Living Well with Dementia. And it's from the Dementia Action Alliance. And it has testimonies from other people who are living with this diagnosis. And that really guides conversations. And so that's another weekly group that we offer on that Monday morning session. And the last group that we offer every Monday morning is if someone has progressed a little bit more with their diagnosis, we get to be with others who are also experiencing these changes. And we call it kind of like it's kind of like a social club. Yeah. We provide coffee, conversations. We lead through various activities that are meaningful and purposeful. And so if a caregiver maybe doesn't feel comfortable leaving their loved one at home to go and receive this support with other caregivers, they have the opportunity to bring their loved one, and we get to have a really great time every Monday morning.
Yeah.
So,
and then my favorite thing is we've seen your choir perform quite a bit. So tell us about why you guys have a choir and what that is.
Yeah, so you did get to hear the chorus, and that was one we kind of made for Giving Hearts Day. But we are also a fiscal sponsor of the Sing From Your Heart chorus, which is a dementia-friendly chorus here in Fargo-Moorhead, where an incredible lady by the name of Deb McTaggart is the chorus director, decided she wanted to start this here in our community. And Deb McTaggart came from Minneapolis, where there's a chorus called the Giving Voices Chorus. And when she moved here to Fargo-Moorhead, she was surprised that we didn't have one yet. And so she took the initiative to start. And if you aren't familiar with dementia, one of the biggest benefits we can experience is by listening to music and to singing and to just be embraced by music, basically, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And some beautiful things can happen when we use music in that way. And when we, whether we're in a chorus or not, there can be significant benefits to listening to music for our brains. And so Deb McTaggart does a fantastic job leading this chorus. They meet weekly for rehearsals, and they have quarterly concerts. And it's participants who are living with dementia a part of this chorus. It's people who are caregiving for someone living with dementia. It's volunteers. They always are looking for more volunteers to be a part of the chorus to help make this chorus succeed. But yeah, it's a really incredible thing, the Sing From Your Heart chorus. And even people who have progressed, maybe to the later stages of their dementia, you put a song on and they can sing that beautifully, even if communication is a challenge for them.
Wow, I love it. Do they have a favorite song that they sing?
That's a good question.
I am so curious. I'm going to have to ask Deb.
You might have to.
I love it. So thank you for sharing a lot just about your programs and your support groups and the chorus and just all the fun services that you guys are offering to provide support with those with memory loss. So I know it takes a lot of partners, a lot of care to be with those with memory loss, to help them, to support them. So what other partners are you guys working with to make that happen?
Yeah. And I should say, I covered one of our programs. We have a lot of other programs too. But it does take a village. I mean, it takes a team. We're a small team of 4 at this point at Memory Cafe, and we definitely can't do it on our own. I would also highlight our volunteers. We have over 70 volunteers that are really passionate about serving our participants at Memory Cafe. And they do a variety of different roles to help us create and implement our programming at Memory Cafe. We actually just looked at this past year and the amount of hours served by our volunteers. And I just have to say, it saved our organization over $103,000.
Wow.
Just by the amount of volunteer time put into Memory Cafe.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's
huge opportunity for anyone listening.
pretty incredible. Other community partners, though, that we work with, I mentioned Coach Jake from CrossFit Fargo. Coach Jake has an incredible experience in a variety of settings, obviously CrossFit, but also serving at TNT, Able Games. He does a Parkinson's exercise group at his gym. And he's also really passionate about serving those living with dementia and caregivers and making sure that they're taking care of themselves and their physical health. And so he's at our weekly Monday morning sessions, and he brings that motivation and he brings that movement, which we appreciate. Another partner, we have a gal who comes on Mondays who leads our Living with Dementia groups, who has kind of a Montessori activity facilitated role, where she brings in different Montessori-based activities that can be really great for people living with dementia. And other partners, I think, is just our referring partners. Our teams over at Sanford, Essentia, our smaller clinics in the area are really fantastic about, if someone that they are serving is impacted by dementia, making sure they connect them to Memory Cafe, and making sure they're aware of our programs and resources that we can provide along the journey.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yes.
So I want to ask, is there a stigma around memory loss? And if there is, what does that look like and what do we need to do about it?
Yeah, there is a stigma around this diagnosis, and that's typically why people are not comfortable sharing that they are living with this diagnosis of dementia or any cognitive impairment. Also why their loved ones are maybe hiding the diagnosis from others too, because of that stigma. We are working really hard at Memory Cafe to reduce that stigma. And I think I'm really proud of our participants at Memory Cafe for raising their voice and for sharing, I am living with this. I'm living with dementia. And this is how I feel about it. And I'm still living, and this is how I'm living well with this diagnosis. And it's really brave to do that. But by doing that, we can help reduce that stigma. And so it's through more conversations. It's also through our caregiver voices, sharing what it's like to be a caregiver, and how can we support other caregivers along this journey. So I think it's through raising our voice that we can help reduce the stigma. I also think it's through education. Each year, Memory Cafe hosts an annual Redefining Memory Loss conference, and it's through education like this that we can get our community together to learn more about this. We always encourage community members who maybe aren't even impacted by this diagnosis to join us on this day to receive this education from the leading dementia experts on this topic so we can help reduce the stigma around the diagnosis.
Very cool. I'm going to ask of some fun takeaways from that conference because I'm curious. But before we do that, you brought up a point about caregivers' voice. And I'm wondering if you can share with us what is something that maybe someone from the general public that hasn't experienced being a caregiver for someone with memory loss, what is something that we wouldn't know?
That's a really good question. I think there's many things you probably wouldn't know if you haven't been on this journey of being a caregiver for someone living with dementia. I think there's a lot of unknowns, and the unknowns can be really scary on this journey. There's a quote, if you've seen one person living with dementia, you've seen one person living with dementia, because you don't know exactly how it's going to impact your loved one. And I think the unknown in that is really challenging for our caregivers. And a lot of us want to be perfect as a caregiver. We want to do everything that we can to be the best for our person, but that's not always possible.
I'm also curious if you have any impact stories that remind you why you do what you do. I'm sure you have so many little nuggets of fun stories of just everyone at Memory Cafe and just client stories that have just kind of come out of the woodworks, or I'd love to just hear more from you. Oh,
there's so many great stories. Hosting weekly programs on Monday mornings, it's such a great way to start the week. I think one of the most beautiful things about Memory Cafe is the friendships that form amongst this diagnosis. And seeing someone join Memory Cafe for the first time and knowing that it took a lot of brave courage to walk through the doors of a Memory Cafe program for the first time, recognizing that for that individual or that couple, and you can kind of see it on their face when they come to our registration desk for the first time, but then seeing them leave a program and likely they're walking out with a new friend. And I think that is probably my favorite part about Memory Cafe is seeing people create beautiful friendships that they never knew these people before this diagnosis. They wouldn't have known these people before this diagnosis or without Memory Cafe. But this diagnosis is creating really strong bonds. Our caregivers, for example, they now go to each other's lakes together. They have texting groups together, and they have really strong friendships because of Memory Cafe.
That's so sweet and so beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, I think it is. It's great.
Yeah. So a while back, you were talking about your annual conference, and I'm curious if you have any fun takeaways that the leading experts were talking on, sharing on how dementia is trending, just tell us a little bit, for those that did not attend, some fun takeaways.
Yeah. It was a fantastic 6th annual Redefining Memory Loss conference. We were really excited with our turnout, with our speakers, just everything. It was a really great day. This year, our speakers were from Mayo Clinic. We had Dr. Stuart McCarter, who is a neurologist at Mayo, and he diagnoses various types of dementia, and he is involved in research. He did a fantastic job helping us understand what is dementia in 2025. What is it like now, and what's coming next for a diagnosis of dementia. And we appreciated that, because sometimes when you hear a doctor speak, you may not always understand exactly what they're saying. But he was really helping us understand this diagnosis. I think one thing that was really great to hear a neurologist share is how far we've come with the diagnosis phase of dementia. I think he mentioned 8 years ago, someone would not be able to know what type of dementia they were living with until they passed away. It was through an autopsy that someone would know, okay, they had Alzheimer's disease or they had frontotemporal dementia. And so you had to wait for that person to pass away. Where now, 2025, through the various testing processes, whether it's neurocognitive assessments, whether it's brain imaging, they can certainly say, almost certainly, pretty much certainly, where's my words here,
right.
Pretty firmly share what type of diagnosis someone is experiencing. Wow. And that is pretty incredible to know, okay, is it Alzheimer's disease, or is it dementia with Lewy bodies, or are we seeing both here? And to know what type of symptoms we may experience based on this is really, really helpful. So we may not know exactly how it's going to impact us, but we can be aware of the symptoms that may arise. And then we know how to navigate those symptoms. And so I thought, and I've known that, but to hear a neurologist share that with 500 people, that also helps reduce that stigma, but it also helps us plan for the future. And I think that is one very powerful thing that we can do.
Wow.
So, that was he did that session. He did an Ask the Doctor session where there were some really fantastic questions in the crowd. And then he was joined by Angela Lundy, who oversees their programs at Mayo Clinic. And her programs really focus on the health and well-being of those impacted by dementia. And so she did a session on, how do we navigate some behavioral changes that can happen. So we had a lot of professional care teams in there learning how do we navigate those changes. And then she also did an ending keynote on the practice of self-kindness. So lots of great takeaways in that. And regardless if you were living with dementia or caregiving, that session was just a powerful one for anyone to hear.
Sounds so good. Thanks for sharing some on that, because I'm going to have to come next year. So you've sold me.
Please do.
Yeah. So we are recording this in June, and I know that that's Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. And I'm curious what that awareness month means to you, and what does it mean to Memory Cafe?
Yeah, it means a lot, because that's another step towards reducing the stigma of this diagnosis. And, I think what's really fascinated about this diagnosis and the reason we exist is that if you're in a room full of people and you ask the question, how many of you are impacted by dementia, whether it's in your personal life, whether it's your friend, almost every hand will probably go up, because there are so many people impacted by this diagnosis. And the numbers are significantly high in the diagnosis. The numbers are also significantly high for after someone receives a diagnosis of receiving an additional diagnosis of anxiety and depression. And so the more support that we can provide to people on this journey, it's needed and it's helpful. So Brain Health and Awareness Month is a great thing, and I'm really glad that we can raise awareness in this month of June about this diagnosis and how we can best support those on this journey.
Yes. Well, thank you guys for everything that you guys do to support those impacted by memory loss on their journey. I know I'm a huge fan of Memory Cafe. I've, just being around you guys here and there. It's so fun to see and feel those friendships that are being built and just the beauty of it all. So thank you guys for what you do. And as we wrap up this conversation, I want to just ask you, how can the community support you guys? How can they get involved? I know you guys have had some exciting news in the news recently with some building updates. And so I'd love for you to just share on how we can support you.
Absolutely. There's many ways you can support Memory Cafe, whether it's just following along with us and knowing what programs are available. So if you are impacted by this diagnosis, or someone you know is, you can share about Memory Cafe. Another way is support volunteer. We are always looking for different volunteers at Memory Cafe with a variety of different skill sets and passions. The other way is financial support. There's no oversight funding source to host a Memory Cafe, to be a Memory Cafe. There's Memory Cafes all over the world, but we all are running on our own organization base. And so being a financial support to our organization and supporting our memory loss community so that we can continue to walk alongside those who are impacted by dementia. So those are a few ways that you can support. Yes, we are really excited. We've been looking for a long time for a building, and we're excited for the future of Memory Cafe and the programs and resources we can continue to offer through that building.
Yes. Well, congratulations on that. I'm excited to follow along and see your guys' journey. So
thank you.
Seriously, Maggie, thank you for all that you do. And thank you for sitting down today to just educate us more on Alzheimer's and dementia as we're talking about the stigma and what we can do about it. And truly, I just appreciate this conversation. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been really great.
Yes. Thank you. Memory Cafe of the Red River Valley is doing incredible work supporting those struggling with dementia, as well as the caregivers of those with dementia. They're providing support groups and activities that are meaningful and purposeful, where those struggling with memory loss can meet others and they can learn how others are living well with this diagnosis and navigating these changes that are impacting their day-to-day lives. It's a scary thing to experience or even care for someone experiencing not being able to recall what you just did or an encounter you just had, or even the right words to say in a conversation. Then also feeling like you're not able to share that these changes that you're experiencing in your brain, because out of fear, you don't want others to know. But being honest with this diagnosis and sharing it with others is huge because as we learned today, isolation is a big concern with this diagnosis. I love how Maggie shared that the great benefit of socializing with this diagnosis and not being alone is so important because the ability to communicate with others is a big part of the brain's function. I also love how Maggie shared that she's heard doctors say that they wish that they could make a prescription for people to go out and socialize and to be in community with others. Because the numbers are significantly high for someone who gets a dementia diagnosis also being diagnosed with anxiety and depression. But wow, there are beautiful things happening at Memory Cafe, and it was so fun to hear from Maggie today with their work of breaking the memory loss stigma, providing resources and support, and building friendships amongst this diagnosis. So don't forget that you can check out more at memorycaferrv.org. All right, folks, that's a wrap for today. Thank you so much for listening. We really hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll catch you next time on the DMF podcast. And remember, we are called to serve.